Hi, this is JoAnna Brandi, and welcome to Living on the Growing Edge. It's a crazy, changing, evolving, and expanding world. So, staying ahead today means more than just keeping up, it means exploring the frontiers of thought, innovation, ideation. In this long form video series, I bring you face to face with visionaries, disruptors, thinkers who are shaping tomorrow's workplaces and worlds by living out on the growing edge. They're reframing, reimagining, and re envisioning. And as I learned from my first guest, reinventing. So I'm happy you're here. Enjoy the series. You can always leave comments below and be sure to subscribe while you're here. Hello, hello. This is JoAnna Brandi, and welcome to The Growing Edge. Today I am here with the iconic Brian Kurtz. And I know you'll enjoy hearing his story.
Yeah,
Brian,
iconic is giving me a little too much credit, but that's okay.
well, in my mind, you're iconic.
Okay.
So Brian was a primary force behind Boardroom Inc., an iconic publisher, right? For 34 years. He has worked, he's written books. He's got, oh, I got your book here. I love that. Written this fabulous book called Overdeliver, which I love. He's also written a book about advertising legends. He has worked with some of the world's most brilliant copywriters, right, Brian?
Copywriters and marketers. I mean,
And marketers.
when you're in
Okay.
the business for over 40 years, as you've been as well,
Yeah.
you're gonna if you're lucky enough to meet people and then learn from them, it's like I'm a sponge. So I've been in great spots in my career to be able to grow, given the topic of this podcast or these interviews.
Yeah.
And so to grow, you really need to learn and always be a student. And I also, another thing that I did early in my career, and you know this because you were there, because you and I met in the 1980s when we were both 9 years old.
I was
Uh,
just going to say absolute babies, right?
yeah, real
Playground.
babies. We were 9 at the time. But we used to talk about like, I used to gravitate. I was in my 20s and 30s, right? And I used to gravitate to the people in their 70s and 80s. And so the bad news is that all my mentors are dead, basically.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Because if you do the math, 20 to
Yes.
70, and now I'm 66, they're all dead. I did have some mentors that were younger than 70 at the time. It's true. But you remember the people like Lee Epstein and Annette Brodsky and all these people that nobody would ever know anymore.
Right,
But
right.
they were some of the most influential people on my career in terms of how my formative years in marketing took place. And so and the reason why I did that, and I got made fun of by my friends at the time, not you, because you understood it, but some of my other friends made fun of me because they said, "Oh, what are you hanging out in the geriatric club for?" and all that.
Really?
Wanted to go play golf, and whatever jokes they would make. And I said, "No, I'm going to where the wisdom is. I'm going to where all the wisdom is." And I still believe that. And what's happened, now that I'm 66 years old, when someone comes to me and they don't, if they come to me and says, "Will you be my mentor?" I say that's not how it works.
Okay.
But if they come to me and they say I am a mentor to them, even though I don't even know them, because they've read my book or they read my blog every week or whatever, that means a lot to me because it says that I'm making a difference with the next generation. And anybody ever calls me an OG, an original gangster, that's the best because that's the ultimate compliment for me because I'm not grandpa at the picnic. I'm an original gangster. Big difference, right?
Yeah, that's a big
Grandpa at the
difference.
picnic, I'm not waving my finger saying you young whippersnappers, all that shit. That's not my game. My game is to kind of be the bridge, and you are too, the bridge between the fundamentals that we learned
Hmm.
and how they relate to everything that's state of the art today. And that is a growing edge. I mean, it really is.
It's definitely a growing edge, and I want to go back just a moment and make sure that everybody understands like who you are, because um, we can't we have to talk a little bit about Boardroom and who Boardroom was and how you got mentored up through the years by Marty Edelston, who was I, I still see him as one of the most exquisite people because
I call him entrepreneur classic.
entrepreneur classic. That's great. And I remember you saying once that you're responsible for bringing in over $1 billion, $39 at a time, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like you were selling big contracts. You were selling. Is Boardroom still there? Because I used to get that newsletter every
Yeah,
week,
so we were a newsletter and book publisher. We
right?
had the company was called Boardroom because the first newsletter before I got there in 1972. I'm going to say I wasn't born yet, but I was born. I just wasn't working yet. I was in junior high school. Um, but the company was formed based on a newsletter called Boardroom Reports, and Marty Edelston took his life savings at the time, started Boardroom Reports. He
Wow,
it was only 20 or $25,000 in 1971 or
that was a
1972.
lot of money back then,
There
huh?
was a lot of money, and it was he wanted to do a magazine that
Uh-huh.
told business people how he basically said, Forbes, Fortune, Business Week, and the Wall Street Journal told you what's happening at big businesses, but they
Okay.
didn't tell you how to hire, how to fire, how to run a company, how to really
Yeah. Yeah.
do the stuff that you really need to do when you're running a company. So he wanted to do a magazine, didn't have the money to do a magazine, but he did a newsletter. And a
Wow.
newsletter is basically editorial without advertising, a,
Right.
a short version. I mean, there are a lot of different types of newsletters. And so he launched Boardroom Reports. It went on for 10 years. When I got there in 1981, we had just launched The Executive at Home, which was called Bottom Line Personal. And Bottom Line
Oh, I
Personal,
remember that.
well,
Oh my
Bottom Line
God.
Personal became the flagship of the company, and Bottom
Okay.
Line became the branding of the company because it's classic marketing, right? You don't decide what the market wants. You go to where the market is, and
Right.
so you don't create. And Gene Schwartz, one of the great copywriters of all time, the author of the great book Breakthrough Advertising, which I happen to have the rights to through his wife. Um, Basically, Gene says the copywriter and marketer doesn't create desire in the marketplace. The desire is already there, and it's up to the copywriter or marketer to figure out how to farm it, how to deal with it, how to present it, because the desire is out there. Just that you have to come up with the right messaging that it'll reach the right people. So the universe told us that your Boardroom Reports newsletter is okay, but Bottom Line Personal, what a great idea. Like a consumer newsletter for the business executive. And of course, so many things spawned off of that because then you started talking about health. And then we had a whole line of health books and health newsletters.
I
Then
remember
it was,
those.
and then it was taxes, and we had a tax newsletter and tax books. So there was a lot of things that basically, and I did a blog post that was, branding without getting hives. And basically, the terms branding and public relations and publicity were things that gave me hives because it wasn't direct
Oh my.
marketing. Well, no, but because it's not direct marketing. Direct marketing, direct response marketing is marketing that's measurable, marketing that's
Right.
accountable, marketing
Right.
that has an ROI, a return on investment. With every piece of media you buy, or any ad you run, or anything you do, you can
Uh-huh.
see whether it worked or it didn't, and you don't have to guess. And there's a lot of intricacies in all of that. There is branding within direct marketing, but you have to be strategic about it. Not everybody has a Nike swoosh automatically. It
Right.
doesn't just
Right.
happen. So
Right.
there's a lot of blocking and tackling to create a brand. But we
Wow.
created a brand, Bottom Line Personal. Maybe no one on this call listening ever heard of it. Well, we had 1 million subscribers to a print newsletter. So some people heard of it, and it was $39. So the comment I made about selling over $1 billion worth of business, $39 at a time, was actually in response to one of the biggest mistakes of my career, which is
What?
never having an ascension program, never having today everything is ascension. You start with a $39 product or a
Oh
lead,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then you go to a $900 product, then you go to a $1,500 product, and then you go to a $25,000 whatever. And we sold a lot of multi products to consumers and business people, but we never really raised our prices. In other words, we never went out to higher price products and services, which is a tougher business. I got to tell you, to sell $1 billion worth of business, $39 at a time, I don't recommend it, and I don't think it's doable in today's environment. But back in the 80s, the go-go 80s, when there was no internet, It was all direct mail. It was all print publication. It was all radio and TV. So you really had to really talk about blocking and tackling. You had to have incredible discipline in what you were doing.
Mhm.
You're paying for postage and printing on every piece that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
every sales letter. You got to have a lot more chutzpah and discipline, and you have to make sure that you're not wasting the time of the prospects and your own time in the kind of marketing today. With email marketing, for example, or doing a webinar launch or stuff like that, you can do it. You can do it at a low price. You could also do it with low impact also.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
so and that's in my book, chapter 3 of Overdeliver, is how paying postage made me a better marketer. It's
I
not
love
to
that.
endorse
Yes.
direct mail for
Yeah.
everybody, but it is to basically let people know that learning, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but learning direct mail, because that's all we had when I started in
Right.
marketing,
Right.
has made me a better online marketer today because I understand the fundamentals, I
Of
understand the
course.
eternal truths of direct response marketing, and that's why I can teach it. And that's why today I have higher price products. I left Boardroom in 2015. I launched a mastermind, a $25,000 a year mastermind. I had 30 companies in it and multiple people from the companies. These are big marketers. And we had 3 live events a year. I had the best speakers. We had the best it was awesome. I ran that for 8 years, and now I have a mastermind which you were in, Titans Accelerator, which is a bigger version of that at a lower price because I wanted to
Yeah,
reach more
yeah.
people, and
Do
that's
you
only $2,000 a year.
don't you still have a higher version than Titans? I thought you still ran
Well,
another
no,
master.
Titans Mastermind
Oh,
was
it's a
a $25,000 a year master,
yeah.
and I had it for 8 years. I folded it in 2022 or in 23. Um, But at the same time, I have a virtual mastermind that doesn't have live events, but it's got Zoom events, which you were in, Titans Accelerator.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's,
okay. I was in a different program. That's right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's Titans Accelerator. Titans Mastermind, my company is Titans Marketing,
That
and
I know.
Titans
Yeah.
Mastermind was my high-end mastermind. But it was the mistake I made my first 34 years of not having higher prices. As soon as I left Boardroom, my first product was
Yeah.
Titans Mastermind at $25,000. I
Good
did
for you.
I did a descension program because it made sense because I had 34 years building relationship capital, building my reputation, building whatever I built, and it was decent. And I said, you know what? I don't have to start with $100 product or a
Right.
$2,000 product. I could start with a $25,000 product, and it wasn't arrogant of me to do it. It was basically a natural thing. Plus,
Mhm.
I was envious of sorts. Well, I'm never envious, but I was I was learning from the people that did ascension programs that I
Yeah.
could do a descension program. So I started with the 25,000. Then I've got like
Wow.
I sell books for $125. I sell courses for $295, and I have a virtual mastermind at 2,000. Those are my low prices now. No, no
It's so
$39,
amazing.
not many $39 pro. I do have a $19 swipe file. I do have a $99 interview series. But yeah, it's like I went from high price to low price because I spent my first 34 years selling $1 billion worth of product, $39 at a time, which
Well,
you brought this up. So you got me
I
there.
know. I
Yeah.
know. I know. Well, also, I think you learned from the best people in the business. You're like a sponge, and you learned from the best people in the business. So this isn't just, oh, okay, I left that job. I'm going to start this job. You
No, no,
have
not at
worked
all. In
the
fact,
wisdom.
yeah.
I still have in a storage closet, and you're not even going to believe this, on paper, in envelopes, a direct response program that you did on how to be how to be 25 years ago. And I remember that the copy was so brilliant that I said, "Do you by any chance have that around?" And I've still got that in a swipe file. The copy was so amazing,
Yeah.
crystal clear, led people down the path. You had to say yes. I mean, this. I think direct response copywriting is such an art. Oh, it's such an
Well,
art.
yeah, I mean, and it's the thing that I teach now is that, people think I'm a copywriter and I'm not.
No.
But I've worked with all of the top copywriters that have been working copywriters during my lifetime. So
Uh,
I've worked with the best of the best, and I know good copy from bad copy. I know how to choose a copywriter. I know how to vet a copywriter. I know what a copywriter needs to do their best work. So I have an angle on it, but I'm
Sure.
not a copywriter. So people write to me and they go, "Oh, can you teach me how to write copy?" I said, "No, I can't. That's not my skill set." But my
Okay.
skill set is marketing. And I will say the thing about copywriting that I find, and I've had a bunch of conversations just this week about it because I'm doing a little boot camp, a $197 boot camp on my
Hmm,
book, the Overdeliver boot camp. And it's a 2.5 week, 6 calls,
that's
an hour
great.
and a half each, and I go
Ah,
through the book. And so we just did the copywriting thing. And I started it and I said, you know what? You'll walk away from this session understanding that copywriting is not a commodity. It
mhm.
is, as you said it already, it's magic. It's not posing,
Absolutely.
and it's not tricks, and it's
No,
not ninja tactics.
nope.
It's hard won knowledge and wisdom. And some people are good at it, some people aren't. Now, what's happening today with AI and ChatGPT is people are getting sloppy. They think that they have shortcuts all of a sudden. To me, ChatGPT is a great tool for a
Yep.
copywriter, but it's not. If you rely completely on ChatGPT, you won't be the best. You'll just be a bot. And it's to be the best. You need to stay ahead of technology. You need to stay ahead of the game. And so there's a lot in the industry now about basically how do you stay ahead,
Right.
use ChatGPT and then stay ahead of it. And that's what copywriting seems to be all about today. But it's still about farming relationships with your clients and dealing with all the things that have always taken place in business, including, a happy culture, which is what your specialty is. It's all related. And so to think that, some piece of technology throws everything else out the window, it changes things for sure. I'm not being a Luddite when I'm saying that, but it's very important to always maintain that even keel of what's really important, what things stand the test of time, and then build on it, as opposed to throw out the old and only go with the new.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are making that mistake. I only use it as a tool. I find it's a good editing tool because, as you know, I tend to be wordy.
Yeah,
So
first
my audience
versions,
tends to
first
want.
drafts, it's fantastic.
They're great. I write my first drafts. I write my first drafts, and then I use Claude. I hand it over to Claude, who I'm becoming very friendly with, by the way. And I go, "Hey, Claude, I need a little help today. Can you cut this down?" And we go back and forth. But the
Yeah, the
last
prompts
draft,
are key. The being creative with your prompts is
yes,
critical,
yeah.
right?
But the last thing you see when you read I don't write a newsletter anymore. I write a muse letter. I figure I'm in the wisdom years, so I
Yeah,
get to
yeah, yeah.
use all I want. And so but the last thing you see is written by me.
Yeah.
Never Claude. I will never give him that
Well,
much
I,
credit.
I have this. I have ChatGPT that does. I have a Wednesday blog that is basically a version of my podcast, and the first version of that email, that blog, is done 100% on ChatGPT.
Oh,
I
interesting.
get that. I get that, and it gives me an angle, but you wouldn't recognize what I write after that, because the final version is all me, and that's what I want.
And but I think that's so important is that you've always we both of us talked a lot about relationship marketing. You can What we're doing is we're not really trying to sell something. We are building a relationship that we hope will last for a lifetime.
Yeah,
That's
I've
a
got some great
point.
quotes in that. It's like
Uh,
everything is not a revenue event in marketing or in life, but
yeah,
everything is a relationship event. And
exactly.
also, customers don't refund, they refund transactions. They don't refund relationships. So if you're in a transactional
Right.
relationship with anybody, they can refund that. When you have a true deep relationship with somebody, they're not going to refund it unless you want to refund it. And so
Really interesting.
Yeah, you had it. I mean, you know this better than anybody. So, it's all about, Jay Abraham, one of my mentors, the guy who wrote the foreword to my book, he wrote, he says that he has the term relationship capital. And I took it to the next level. I said, relationship capital is the most important account, not bank account, but account that you'll
Account.
ever own. You'll
Yeah.
ever own.
And that's very true. That is very, very true. And even the fact, I mean, you and I haven't had the opportunity to, well, we did. We were in each other's company, and maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I came up to Connecticut and I saw you. But it's not like it used to be. We used to see each other at the direct marketing
Right.
clubs and things like that. I essentially removed myself from direct marketing, which was a mistake. But as my career began to progress, I got the opportunity to speak for Eek Magazine, who put me in front of a different kind of audience.
Yeah, but
So,
you know what? I would say to you on that, I'd say marketing isn't everything. It's the only thing. And I'm
well,
only and I'm not saying that as like a marketing whore, and I'm not saying that as
I'm not saying that's the marketing work.
I'm not, but
Is
it
that your
really is.
expression?
I
Oh,
mean,
that's cool.
e- everything, it's sort of like the old story, if you build it, they'll come. No, they won't. No, they
Yeah,
won't.
I
You need
know.
to,
I'm
yeah.
finding that out. I'm finding that
Right. And
out.
that's what I know I've coached you on that
Yeah,
inside of Titans Accelerator because I think it's important that, and the thing is, when I've spoken internationally quite a few times, and when I go to an international audience, like I was in Hungary, not you wouldn't think they'd be all that receptive
wow.
to an American entrepreneur teaching them about marketing. I mean, this was a country that was communist until 1989. However, the guy
Wow.
running the event is the leader for marketers and entrepreneurs in Hungary. So I had an audience that was interested in what I had to say. However, they
Huh.
were sitting on their hands when I got on stage because I'm the ugly American, right? This guy is going to try to reach into my wallet from the stage and grab my money. And so I started with a premise that said marketing isn't everything, it's the only thing. Don't leave yet. And then I said, I had a three-pronged thing, which was, marketing is not evil. Then I went into, and I really made the case that,
Wow.
because everybody thinks that anybody who thinks marketing is evil will just probably be a failure. I'm not saying that universally, but marketing it's all levels, right? You can turn it up, you can turn it down. The
Right,
spigot
right.
is it's a spigot. And if it's not comfortable with for you to do an aggressive selling campaign or something that is not suited to your personality or not congruent with who you are and what you want to do, then so be it. You don't have to do it that way. But to sit back and say, oh, marketing's bad, marketing's evil. So I had to like set that up
Who says
early.
that?
What's
But
that?
who says marketing is evil?
I'm saying that there were people I made the assumption that there were people in the Hungarian entrepreneurial audience with an
Okay.
American on stage that might think that. I wanted to get it out of their heads
Okay.
immediately. So I'm
Okay.
not saying that people are thinking it all, but there are still a lot of people. There are a lot of people that think it though in the United States. People who are cause related, people who are like, all about you'll see it in both on the right and the left. You'll see it in environmental causes, in fundraising, and all kinds of
Wow.
stuff. And they look, a lot of them do ask for donations, and they have to market too. They have to sell. But you know what? They think that if they do something that goes too far, that it's evil for some reason. And that's what I mean by marketing is evil. So,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
and it's different for every company, for every person. It's a different scale, but that's the point. The point is that you have to be able to play within an area that you feel comfortable in. And that's what I let them know. I said, you don't have to do marketing like I do marketing. And I don't even think I'm that aggressive with my marketing. But I was at Boardroom, that was much more aggressive. We're selling $39 newsletters and
Oh
books. You
yeah.
had to be aggressive.
There's a huge difference between how
Exactly.
you market now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But everything I do now has to be congruent with who I am, what I represent, and if it's not, then I change it because people tell me that that's not like you, Brian, or that didn't make sense. And
Interesting.
I listen to my audience on a regular basis, and that's what marketing's about. And
Right.
then after I got them to understand that marketing isn't everything, it's the only thing. marketing is not evil. Then I went into a whole thing like marketing's about specialization. It's not about like selling all things to all people. And I tried to let them all realize, and I do this in the United States too, but this was particularly, I'm using a foreign audience. I've spoken in Italy, I've spoken in Hungary, I've spoken in France, Germany, Netherlands, um, um, one other, but whatever. But I do it because I'm not country dropping, but I'm
You're not country
close to
dropping.
name dropping. But I am saying that I love doing it because I know that I can provide something that someone's got to provide them, because it so happens I'm not a snob, but the United States is the king of marketing as a country, that everybody looks to the United States.
Sure.
There's no one that even comes close. Germany and Australia are not nipping at our heels, but they do a lot better marketing than most other countries. And Italy's coming up a bit, and France and the UK and Canada is does a lot of good marketing. But the United States, it's like here, and then the second place is way down. I'm not saying that as a snob. I'm saying that it's our responsibility as Americans to teach, and to teach what we know, and they take it and adapt it to their country. And I've seen this time and again, like the guy in Hungary who's the leader of marketing and entrepreneurship in Hungary came to the United States, joined mastermind groups, learned it, but then he
Yeah.
went back and he taught it in his own language, of course,
Language.
but in
Sure.
his own way of doing it, knowing he knew the audience much better. I had a much harder time with his audience teaching
Sure.
marketing than he did.
Sure.
So I love it. I love the fact that, we, as an American, I can be valuable. I'm not going to say, I'm a global phenomenon by any means, but I can definitely teach
Sure.
a lot of people the basics, and they can take the basics and run with it. And as long as they accept the fact that, things like marketing, I really had to teach them that, marketing is not an evil word.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And I love to step back in time for just a moment or two, because there are things that stand out when I think about you. Um, One of them is that you have always talked about customer service as an act of marketing, which
Yes.
you don't hear people talk about. And I got into the business, I got into teaching people how to take better care of their customers, because when I was a marketer, what I noticed was that people spent a lot of money up front getting those customers in the door. And remember, back then there was no internet. So we would have 800 numbers. And I had clients that would set up a special 800 number for the new program they were running. And then they'd forget to tell the switchboard operators. We had
Right.
switchboard operators back then. And I would watch campaigns fail before they ever got off the ground, because people didn't think about it. Oh, they didn't think about it all the way through.
Yeah.
And they didn't think that if you have good customer service and good positive word of mouth, your marketing becomes easier. I was blessed because I learned from people like Dick Nelson and Don Leiby, and kept going to all the conferences and things like that about the importance of taking care of those customers once you had them. So speak on that just a little bit for
Yeah,
me.
it's so important.
Specific
Yeah,
question for you.
yeah. It's like, people talk about funnels all the time, marketing funnels. And,
Okay.
and I think that it's a lazy word. It's important. A funnel means you move people through a series
Right.
of
Right.
offers and things like that, pop-ups and cross-sell and upsell. But I think when you have your eye on the funnel and not your eye on the people, which you already said, you're gonna miss the boat at some point. And so I always say lists, we were both in the list business. I always say lists are people too. They are real human beings. They have
It's
to be
true.
treated as such. And
That's true.
so I have a whole chapter in Overdeliver that's customer service and fulfillment. And in
Mhm.
that chapter, I talk about things like, you know, making sure that, when it's so much easier to deal with someone who's already bought from you than to go to get the first order. So
Mhm.
you can't let people go. Online today, you have offers that have refund rates up to 50%. That
Oh,
is ridiculous. I mean, when we were on TV, we were selling books on TV at Boardroom. I remember hearing that on infomercials, you'll get 20-30% refunds. I said, I'm not going to be in a business that has 20 to 30% refunds. I just will refuse to be that, because that means I'm not delivering on my promise. I'm not delivering on what I'm saying I'm going to deliver on. So we got our refund rate under 10% at one point.
Wow.
And we did it because we made sure that what we did on the phone when people called in, we treated them, we went to different telemarketing firms. One didn't work as well as another. You need to listen in on customer service calls. In my chapter in Overdeliver on customer service and fulfillment, I talk about how any CEO that doesn't at some point listen in on customer service calls within their company is nuts. Now, I'm not saying you should do it as a full-time job, but
Yeah.
listen to what your customers are saying, because even in a small entrepreneurial company, you get so removed from the customers that you need to do that. Also, secret shoppers is such an amazing thing that every company should do. Secret shopper is you get somebody, you pay them to basically buy everything, break everything, but they don't tell anybody they're being hired by you, the CEO, and you find out where the holes are in the bucket called your business. And that's the only way to find out where you're missing. Because if you sit in your ivory tower, even if it's not a tower and it's only a desk in a small office, you're not going to you need boots on the ground all the time. And it's either your boots or someone else's boots letting you know every step of the way what's happening in the customer. It's not just the funnel, it's the customer experience.
Customer experience.
And in
Absolutely.
fact, I have my friend Jason Friedman has a company called the Customer Experience, and he has it down to a science. He has a course in it. He has he's an amazing guy. He gamifies it for customers, but he is so and he didn't, and it's funny, he didn't like the title Over Deliver for my book. This is a guy who prides himself on customer service. And the reason why he didn't like it is that the term over deliver implies, if I over deliver for you today, what am I going to do for you tomorrow? And that people will eventually be disappointed. My attitude on that is that I'm still going to name the book Over Deliver. And I can live with a couple of times where my over delivery on over delivery wasn't as good as it could have been, but it was still an attempt at over delivery. And I'd rather do that than figure out ways to give less as I move along the chain. So
What?
it's just a philosophy and a mindset more than it is like you have to always beat the last offer and over deliver and over deliver and over deliver. That's the way I describe over deliver, but there are dangers in it. Absolutely. Because it's always like, what are you doing for me lately? And in customer service,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Same thing.
But isn't over deliver part of a sentence that says under promise and over deliver? Because
Yeah, but I
sometimes
don't want to under promise. I'm going to over promise and over deliver.
you're going to over promise and over deliver.
Yeah, I never under promise. I mean, that's the danger, of course. And what
Yeah,
about people who over promise and under deliver?
and
And
under
that's the
deliver.
majority. And that's when you get a 50% refund rate.
Yeah, that's yeah. I have been dying to ask you this question because I was on the inside for a very tiny, short period of time. Will you talk a little bit about the iPower book and the iPower program? Because I was, as a consultant, just so fascinated with what unleashing the ideas of your people inside a company can do. Now, I know it can go over the top, and I think at some point that's probably what happened. But there was so much brilliance in that program. Would you be willing to explain
Yeah. This
about?
was Marty. Marty was always like he was really in the early '80s, mid '80s. He was obsessed with Japanese culture,
Yeah,
Japanese business, and
yeah,
the Japanese were cleaning our clock in the '80s. It dissipated after a while, but they were cleaning our clock. And one of the reasons was their whole Kaizen continuous improvement
yeah,
concept. And so Marty was obsessed with it, but he didn't know how to adapt it to the company. So he happened to be interviewing Peter Drucker.
that I remember.
Marty interviewed, all the best business consultants in the world for the newsletter. And he was out in California. He's interviewing Peter Drucker, and they do the interview. And at the end of the interview, Marty says to Peter Drucker, Peter, the meetings in my company stink. Like we have meetings, we get some, maybe we have a whiteboard, we put some ideas up. The creative meetings are good, because we put all the ideas we want to test. Those work. But just our meetings in general, they don't have objectives. They're just, Marty didn't even express it that way. He just said our meetings suck because Marty was like cut to the chase. And Peter Drucker actually came up with the iPower program because he said, why don't you, at every meeting in the company, whether it's a meeting that's targeted for a department, or if it's a meeting that you just make for the purpose of ideas, why don't you just have everybody comes to the meeting with 2 ideas? They have to come to you can't get into the meeting and they have to come. The meeting is mandatory, but they can't get in the door without 2 ideas. So
I thought it was 5 ideas. That's much more
no,
reasonable.
two ideas at every meeting.
Okay.
I mean, maybe 5 a week. We had quotas, which seemed kind of silly at the time. But you know what? Basically, what iPower was a suggestion hat system with some structure. Because
Yeah.
most suggestion hat systems are a passive hat sitting on a table, and
Right.
people will throw an idea in once in a while when they're pissed off, as opposed to a proactive idea generation, and every idea was taken seriously. So the funny thing is like if you had to have 2 ideas, we had ideas like I think in the bathrooms the toilet paper should be so that it comes down from the top, because if it's at the bottom it ends up going on the floor more. And that was a legitimate idea. And then we started putting the toilet paper. But then we also had one of the ones that's in the book. Marty wrote a book called iPower. It's out of print. I have some copies lying around. And I've written about it.
Myself, actually.
And I did a couple of blog posts about it. And one of the ideas that came up, because it's bottom up too. It's like everybody in the company, whether you're the president or at the lowest level and get customer service, unfortunately, is looked at the lowest level. And your customer service, that's another thing. Your customer service people are the people you really need to reward and compensate and praise, because they have the front line with the customers. And they're always like the ones at the bottom of the barrel. So this was a great opportunity. iPower was a great opportunity for having people at every level say what they're doing in their job, and they see stuff. So this one woman in our fulfillment operation, we ship books, and she was checking the postage one day on the books, and she saw that one of our books was like, I don't know, it was a 500-page book, and puts it in a box, and she saw that it was like one ounce higher than it needed to be or it was 1 ounce made it another level of postage. So, so the postage would go up because of that ounce. So she said, if we could reduce, the numbers might not be right, but if we can reduce the weight of this package by 1 ounce, we can save postage. So we looked into it, and lo and behold, we didn't have to cut the book or anything. All we had to do was trim the pages, have a little lighter cover stock on the book. It was a hardcover book, but we did a little different cover stock. We got it under that. And that little idea that she saw on the scale in the postage for sending out books saved us $300,000 a year at the lowest level of the company. And we weren't a huge company. We were, we were at one time we were $157 million business, but we were a 70 to $100 million business. $300,000 by changing our books by 1 ounce was a significant idea that didn't take much to do, and it had to come from somebody who's working at the ground level. So that was and there were a lot of ideas that came out of that. And one of the things
as I recall,
we paid everybody for their ideas, and for a while we were paying them in cash. So we would walk around the company.
I do remember that.
We would walk around the company and we'd rate the ideas, and an A idea got $10, a B idea got $5, and any idea got $1 or $2. And so people once a month, the guy would walk, or one of our HR people would walk around with an envelope, and you'd sit there and you'd have $110 cash. Now, of course, then the CFO said, "Oh, we can't do that. We got to pay tax on it." Blah 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 blah. It went on the paycheck stub and all that. Then it got more complicated.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in its essence, it was a free-flowing suggestion ad system. And the reason why it was called iPower is that all the words happen to begin with I. Ingenuity, ideas, imagination, innovation. I
Yeah.
have them listed, and that's why it was called iPower. You'd think it was because like it's all about me, all about I, but it's
No,
actually not. It's all
no,
about the team. It's all about the
no.
team.
And again, as I recall, because I was so fascinated by it, I read the book. I came up to see you guys. Um, as I recall, when I pulled myself back, I realized that you were behaviorally conditioning people to think creatively. And I do remember some example, whether it was from you or Marty, I don't, where someone said, if we moved the trash can from where it is over there to closer to my desk, I would save 12 steps or 24 steps. And they brought that down to the amount of money you were saving by doing. But that's the kind of thinking we want people to have.
Yes, it was absolutely. It was a there was a big there was a cartoon in the New Yorker that Marty blew up, and it was right in the middle of our office, and it was like this guy going. He was cleaning out some stuff in the office, and he shows it to someone else, and it was a big sign that said "Think," and he's handing it to this guy. He goes, "What was this for?" It was sort of like, we just didn't think. I mean, Marty just said, if you're going to have a business with smart people and not have them think all the time,
Right.
why have a business and why have people? And so he took it down to that level, and then people were emboldened to think and to think creatively. And even if, sometimes it got a little silly, you know, with the garbage can, maybe that could be a little silly. But you're right in terms of it just got them thinking, and then it built momentum. And, you know, the monetary reward also helps, of course. But it was and we kept it going a lot longer for years and years, but
Yeah.
which most suggestion hat systems die under their own weight.
Yeah. I do remember, because that's the time that I was last up there, that even in the ladies' room, there wasn't a place you could go to where there wasn't a list of this week's winning ideas.
Right. There was
So
that, and
it,
also there was a box in every
right,
every
everywhere
corridor.
you went, I mean,
Yeah.
it was because I remember going, "Wow, you can't even sit on the toilet here without
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah. It was like,
you know."
yeah, it was like it was the iPower newsletter. It was a one pager, and
Amazing.
it was the best ideas of the month, and then other
Yeah,
ideas of the month. And then in the ladies' room and the men's room, right next to the tissue box, was a box for ideas. So
it was gorgeous. Another idea that you and Marty had, which I thought was brilliant, were the boardroom dinners.
yeah.
I remember flying up to New York. Boy, when I get an invitation to come to one of your dinners, I bought a plane ticket like that. It was like, oh my God. Because maybe 12, 24 people at the most. It was a
Well,
very,
it was originally it was 14 because that's all that could fit in Marty's apartment on Central Park South.
never went there.
Yeah, but then we went to the Four Seasons restaurant in New York
Yeah,
City.
yeah.
And those we could accommodate anywhere from 16 to 30. Um, and I outline it in detail in Overdeliver in my book. And I call them intentional dinners because everything you do in life, and Marty taught me this, like, you got to have intention when you're doing. Like when people set up a dinner with other people in business and leave it to chance of where they sit, what they're going to talk about. It's
Right.
not bad because you have good people and you have good people that you can invite. But if you can be intentional about it, like we used to set it up where, and we had the most interesting guests because we had people who we dealt with in marketing, like
Yeah.
you. We had people who were the doctors and lawyers and tax people who were the people that we interviewed for our newsletters. We had all the vendors, like the copywriters and the and the printers and everybody, and then just people that Marty knew over years and years, like people on TV and radio, and all talk show hosts, and just like amazing group of people. And what we would do is that Marty's secretary was aggressive in getting everybody's CV in advance. Marty and I would go through. Marty did the dinners in his apartment. Then at the Four Seasons, I did them with him. Then he had a stroke in 2001, and then for 6 or 7 years I did them by myself. So I did about 150 of these dinners, and
Wow.
we used to, like, it was like a jigsaw puzzle because you had all these CVs of these amazing people, and we would actually have a seating chart. You never want to have a dinner with incredible people and not tell them where to sit, because leaving it up to them is just not it,
Wow.
it makes such a difference, because even if they're randomly seated, they'll probably have a good time. But we saw things in the CVs that we thought this person could work with this person, or this person might be. We used to have, like, whenever I saw a traditional MD and then an ND, like a naturopath, we always put them next to each other because
Wonderful.
sparks were going to fly. When the naturopath says, "By the way, Mr. MD, did you study nutrition in medical school?" And the MD says, "What's nutrition?" And you get into these discussions that you'd never get into otherwise. And so that was part of it. Also, we made sure that I went around the room, did the introductions. I went around the entire room, because when you don't want people introducing themselves, you want to introduce them and give them all the credit. It's much better when someone else is introducing you than introducing yourself.
Absolutely.
Then we leave it to themselves to, I always used to say, now we're going to eat dinner. So you've been seated next to people you're definitely going to hate. So please hate them
Definitely gonna
beautifully.
hate.
Yes,
So
you're
it's
going to hate them.
wow. Yeah.
And then after dinner, we're going to bring it back to one conversation. We had a microphone in the room that we passed around, and each person would then share what's going on in their world. Sometimes Marty or I would prompt them with a question, or sometimes we just say, what's new in the world of, tax accounting? What's new in the world of radio advertising? And so you go around the room, and the beauty of that, and I always talked about this at the dinners, Dick Benson, who was like the best direct mail consultant of all time. You knew Dick, and he was my Pumbaa in terms of direct mail. And
Wow.
I used to go to visit him, like, a couple of times, 3 times a year, with all of our tests, and he would just go through everything, all of our direct mail, and he was just a marketing genius. And at the end of one of those visits, I said, Dick, how'd you get so smart? And I was fawning over him because he was amazing. And he looked at me and he goes, Brian, I know everything about this much. And those of you who aren't looking at the screen now, my thumb and index finger are 3 inches apart. Everybody knows everything about this much. When you have
Wow.
an intentional dinner and you're going around the room, and someone you can curtail to 10 minutes or less. Now, some people think they know everything about this much, and now I'm putting my arms as far as I can, spread apart.
Right.
Then you have to shut them up. But at some point, if you have somebody talking for 10 minutes or less about the thing that they're most expert in, how can you not, and you do that with 15 people, how can that not be a spectacular dinner? It's always going to be. And so then there was another thing about the dinners that I still use all the time, and it's the idea of the best yet. It's the best ever, the best ever. So at the beginning of every boardroom dinner, I would
Okay.
say, this will be the best boardroom dinner ever. At the end of the dinner, I said, Marty, Marty and I would be across the table. I'd say, Marty, that was the best boardroom dinner ever, wasn't it? And he said, oh, absolutely. And then
Oh,
I started saying the reason why is that it's because it's now. And then I had a little spiel about, being in the present. This group will never be assembled again. This will never happen again, exactly as it happened. So it's the best one ever. Now I will confess that the next boardroom dinner will also be the best one ever.
well,
And
of
I
course.
wrote a blog post about that as well recently, that I said, and I think it just went I just went a little viral on LinkedIn. I got a lot of comments on it, that everything you do, looking at it as the best ever, it's not. Some people would say, oh, that's stupid. It's like, you're just being overly enthusiastic and all that. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, if you're intentional and you're in the present, and you're in the present company of wonderful people. You say it's the best ever. You're not committed that it's the best ever forever, but it's the best ever as of right now. And I love that. And even on my Titans Accelerator calls, at the end, someone usually chimes in. They unmute themselves and they go, Brian, this was the best Titans Accelerator call ever. So I've trained them to think in terms of this concept. And it's a living in the present concept, but it's all based on intention, making sure that people are taken care of. After the dinners, we would send out packages. So like if anybody had a book that they had a new book, or they had a book that they want to contribute, they'd all send them to my assistant. She would pack them up, and then they get a package, not just a letter. They get a follow-up package with books and stuff from the people who were at the dinner. Plus, they get a sheet with everybody's contact information.
Right.
So
Right.
it was just when I say soup to nuts, that expression, it was a dinner, so you can say soup to nuts, but soup to nuts, and then after nuts, and weeks later, it became, something that was a lasting memory. And anybody, as you already expressed, anybody who's ever been to a boardroom dinner remembers them, and
Oh, yeah.
because they're memorable, because each one is the best one ever.
And that's a very growing edge concept, because you're just getting better and better and better and better. So each one is the best one
That's
ever.
right. That's
I
right.
have two more questions. I have to ask you this question, since you gave me that, how you set people together. The last one I went to, I was sitting next to a woman. I cannot remember her name, but when we went outside, you're going to smile at this sign, because you're going to remember. She made sex toys.
Oh yeah, that would be
So I want to know why you set me next to the lady that made the sex toys.
I'm thinking of who it is, and I believe it was based on her personality. She was very vivacious. She was outgoing.
She was.
You don't need to have complementary people sitting next to each other. You want people with some light characteristics, not just, because like when you're hiring, it's different. When you're hiring somebody that you're going to work with, it's not like having dinner with them. So when you're hiring somebody, and they need to have opposites to you,
Exactly.
like a Colby. If I'm a quick start in Colby, I need somebody who's
Right.
a good follow through. But in this case, I'm sure it was personality based, not because of the sex.
She was fun. I have to tell you that.
Yes.
She was a lot of fun. And I think my books the last one I wrote was 54 Ways to Stay Positive in a Changing, Challenging, and Sometimes Negative World. And I think the first edition of that had just come out at the time, because I remember being able to announce, I was so proud. I was able to announce it there, and you announced it in the newsletter. There's one more thing I want to talk to you about, because I never got to the bottom of this ever.
Let me just add, I'll add one quick thing. In Overdeliver, I also talk about sitting next to each other at a dinner.
Yeah.
There's another form of the boardroom dinners that everybody can do, even if you're not going to rent out a room, or you're not going to do it for 14 people or 16 people. What, Michael Fishman, who a good friend of ours from the list business, and Ramit Sethi, who's an amazing author. His audience he wrote a book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's about, for 20 and 30-year-olds, how to manage their money, and he's an amazing guy. So Ramit and Michael did 6-person intentional dinners. And what they would do is that they would grab a table at a restaurant that you have to have certain criteria. I mean, for the boardroom dinners, you had to be in a private room with no noise and all of that. For a 6-person intentional dinner, you need to have a place in a restaurant that's quiet. You want to have a round table.
Okay.
And Michael and Ramit would always invite 2 people. Michael would invite 2 people that Ramit's never met, and Ramit would invite 2 people Michael's never met. Now you have a group of 6 of them, and then it would be one conversation around the table. And I've repeated that system of 6-person intentional dinners, like when I go to a conference somewhere, and I look around and I find 5 people that I might want to have dinner with. But then, you have to be able to find a restaurant. You have to find a quiet place. You got to be willing to pay for it. There's a couple of things that are required there, but it's easy to do. And again, being intentional and not just say, "Oh, let's go out for dinner." So
Love that.
I outline it completely and over deliver. So
Wonderful. And I need to know something about that I don't know about. I mean, I do know it about you, but I've never dug down to what's behind it. You're a baseball umpire, and I know that you talk about it a lot, but I've never got, have you done this since your kids were little? I know you're passionate about it. So I'm curious about how does one, why does one do that?
yeah. So Kevin Rogers, who's a copywriter coach, he once asked me not that long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He says, "Why?" And I'll curse here. He says, "Why the fuck would anybody want to ever be an umpire?" Basically,
Well, it
and
doesn't seem like a fun job.
right. But I find it to be the most there are two big reasons because he asked me the question and I went deep with him on it. The first is the focus it takes. So in fact, like I'm working today, I'm doing this interview with you. I have to do some emails, I have to do some work. I'm actually umpiring a state championship game tonight. Um, and when I get out on the field, I can't think about our interview, although I can't think about you then. I'll think
Sure,
about you after and
absolutely.
before. I have to be totally focused so I don't miss a call, that I understand what's going on around me. So that's the good thing. Everybody has that in their life, whether it's yoga, meditation. You want to be able to get out of your routine and into something where you have to focus on something else. But the beauty of umpiring, it's one of those things that nobody comes to the game to see the umpire. So it's sort of like, and going back to customer service, it's like the customer service rep. The only time you hear about the customer service rep is when there's a problem, when there's a complaint, when there's something going on that's bad. The only time the umpire becomes the focus of the game is when they screw up a call or when there's a controversy. So it's very similar to that. And the beauty of it is that I love the idea of doing something that I'm not looking for fame and fortune. I'm not looking for anything but, hey, at the end of a game, if someone comes up to you and says, "Good game, ump," that's the best you're going to get. Now,
Wow.
I extend it to the customer service, and it's in the customer service and fulfillment chapter and over deliver. And I talk about it in terms of like the customer service rep needs to, they can't get nice game ump. So they'll get it and they'll get it from the customer when they deliver it, but they need to let the bosses know what they did, not to brag, but you as the boss or the supervisor needs to recognize them. And I already hinted at this when I said you want to compensate them well, you want to take care of them, you want to give them accolades and kudos as much as possible because they are maybe some of the most important people in your company, even though they're at the lowest on the pay scale.
Right.
And so, the umpire is necessary, as is the customer service rep, but they're critical to create order out of chaos.
You know,
And
it's such an interesting analogy.
oh
I
yeah, I know.
yeah, and I have to tell you that, and that's the focus of what I teach inside the culture, because through my, what, I'm 34 years now of being a consultant and being inside customer service departments, the one thing that I hear with the same words over and over, not all the time, but when I started hearing the same words over and over, it scared me. How come they never notice when I'm doing something right, but when I'm doing something wrong, they're all over me?
Right. And so so you say, why would I want to be an umpire? I like the idea of doing something that is not for the glory, but for the satisfaction. And
Wow.
not, I don't do that in all aspects of my life. There's a lot of things where I want to get kudos. I want to get,
Absolutely.
I'm needy. I'm a human being. But in terms of umpiring, it's one of those things that doing a good job is just so fulfilling. And the fact that I do mostly high-end, high tournament level little league, so I'm dealing with kids,
I
mostly
know.
12 years old and younger. I do high school, but they get more obnoxious in high school. But the 12-year-olds and younger, they are appreciative of what you're doing as well, as are the coaches. Not
Nice.
all of them, of course. There are parents that scream at you, and there are coaches that scream at you, but generally, it's a high satisfaction thing that if you're looking for glory, don't do it. But if you're looking for just internal satisfaction and inner peace, although peace and umpiring don't always go together.
Was it
But
the interviews having to do with me? But okay.
yeah,
That's your
but
bag. What
it's
can I say?
and I've been doing it since I actually the reason why I got into it is I was a fat hit catcher when I was in Little League. So up until 12 years old, you play on a field that has 45-foot bases. So home to first base is 45 feet. So
Okay.
it's a smaller field. When you reach 13 years old, you go on to the bigger field. Now it's 90-foot bases. So everything doubles. And
Okay.
so I'm thinking like, all right, well, I'll just go at 13, I'll just go on the big field. I'll be a catcher there as well. Well, I couldn't reach second base with my throws when I was a catcher on the big field. And I was fat and slow. So when I hit the ball really far, I couldn't get to first base. So I said, you know what? I want to be I love baseball. I love the game. I love that's another thing. I just love baseball. I think it's one of the it's the perfect sport. It doesn't have a clock. It's just a beautiful the way it's laid out. It's a great sport. And so I decided that I have to be in this game. And so I said, "Oh, I can umpire. I know the rules." So that was
Oh,
how I got into it originally. And in fact, I started when I was like 15 years old umpiring at my local little league. And by the time I was 17, I was the umpire in chief of my local little league. So I got really into it at an early age.
I had no idea this started when you were a kid. I figured
I
it
was fat
started when
because I
you
was a
had.
fat because I was a fat, slow catcher.
Oh my gosh, what a story. So I'll ask you one more question, then I'll let you go. What makes you happy, Brian?
What makes me happy? Um, I think it's when I'm in sync with and I'm usually am in sync with my work and my play.
Oh,
So, Marty has on the back of his business card, he's got this Zen Buddhist saying that, when people around you don't know whether you're working or playing, you're always doing both. That's a great place to be.
wow. Wow.
And so that's, I mean, and so um I'm happy. I mean, I hate the word. I don't really. I know happiness is a big
I
word
don't
for
even
you.
like the listen, honey. I don't even like the word
No,
happy, but
I think joy is a much more
joy. Yeah, yeah. What gives
and
you joy?
when I feel joy when my everything seems to be fitting in my work, my play, and in my play that includes my family and that my kids are doing well, that I'm in sync with my wife, and then my work is always play for me. So now, especially now, it always look work was work a lot of my career. But now, if I always say I'm retired, but I'm working full time, but I'm
Yeah,
retired. This is Dan Sullivan thing. He's from Strategic Coach. He's the top coach for entrepreneurs in the world. So this definition comes from him. But I'm retired from things I don't like to do. I'm retired from things I don't do well. That's a big one. And I'm
oh,
retired from people I don't
oh,
want to hang around with anymore. So based on that definition, I'm like 85% retired. But there's still
that's
some
cool.
things that I end up doing that I don't like to do. There's still some things that I do that I shouldn't be because I'm not good at it. And there are some people I hang around with that I'd rather not. But generally, if I can be in sync, that's when I'm most joyous. When I'm doing stuff that I'm not doing stuff that anytime I'm doing something that I'm not good at or that I don't like to do, that's when I get like that. That's a hives thing for
Me
me.
too. Me
Yeah.
too.
But sometimes it's necessary and you got to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying my life is, complete bliss in that respect. But generally, I try. That's where I'm always heading to create joy, and then making sure that the people that are around me are, they're not drains. They have an abundance mindset. Um, they're not going to drain me. It's like anybody in my life if there's someone who when if on the caller ID I see who it is and I don't want to pick up, I got to think twice about like do I want this person in my life anymore? And I
Mhm.
rarely cancel anybody in my life. So it's a tough thing for me, but having people that will drain you will drain your joy too.
Well, and I think being in a culture that I call them energy gains and energy drains, when you've
Yeah.
got good positive management, you have energy gains because that person sees who you are, gives you a position where
Absolutely.
you can use your strengths. But if you're not in the right position and you don't get the right kind of appreciation, you go home at the end of the day and you have no energy left for anybody else. So my whole positive leadership thing is about, are you an energy gain or an energy drain? What are you doing to create the energy?
Right. And
So
then and those people go home, and if they're excited about after work and they come in the next day, they'll continue to be excited too.
that's exactly right. Because then they do something when they get home that gives them more energy. Brian,
Exactly.
you've been so much fun. This couldn't have been better unless we were sitting in a
Yeah, yeah.
dark hotel bar having a scotch at the same time. But I don't know. I haven't been up to New York to do that kind of stuff in a long time. But next time I'm up, you're in Connecticut now. Yeah.
Right, right, right. And I'm in Florida.
Oh,
I'm on the west coast of Florida in the winter.
oh, I didn't know that. Where do you go in the winter?
Lakewood Ranch, south of Tampa.
Very nice. Very nice. It might be a bit, it's winter now. Oh no, what is it now?
No,
Now
no,
it's
no.
summer. Okay, I
No,
just got
it's
confused.
definitely summer. If you're in Florida and you don't know it's summer, then you're in a good
No,
place.
it's definitely summer, but I've got an air conditioning vent right over my head.
There you
So
go.
for a half a moment, it felt like a little winter. Well, Brian, thank you so much for visiting with me. This was so much fun.
Thank you, JoAnna.
It was so much fun, and I will see you back at Titans soon. And I follow your news. Like I just love the way you write. I love your Sunday stories, and now
Yeah,
you're
they're a little long, but they're okay.
a little long, but it's my kind of writing. Go
Good.
straight to the heart. Thank you, Brian Kurtz.
All right. Well, keep me posted on your growing.
I I will. Thank you.
Yes, because you may be on to something big.
I might be. Thank you so much. Bye.
See ya.